Yet another series of sad tales coming out of Plateau State, a state that should normally not be in the news for killings, should be in the news for greater things, positive things. But this is where we are. Over 50 people killed, over 1,000 displaced as a result of the attack on Bokos. We're joined on the program, as you can see, by Major General Augustine Agundu, former Commander Operations Safe Haven. He joins us live from our Abuja studio. Good morning, General. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, Kayode. A pleasure to be here with you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Certainly, and we really hope that we can find a lasting solution to this. It's a topic that we've been on for years now. You can almost predict that every year you'll have at least 5 incidents on the plateau, sometimes even more. And this time around, over 50 people killed. You have had to sit in the command rooms, look at issues from a bird's eye view, different from what people see on the ground. You see all of the different factors that come together to cause insecurity and killings like this. So I'd like to ask, General, when you look at this plateau situation yet again, what do you see that we may have been missing all this while?
Yeah, unfortunately, the situation in Plateau is regrettable that actually took place. It's one death too many, and we know that a lot of efforts are in place to ensure there is no repetitive of these attacks at the level that, at this carnage, at the level that we have seen. It's just too unfortunate because people have decided to take laws into their hands. We must be mindful that the situation in Plateau remains very volatile. It's a case of a multi-dimensional threat to peace and security, to coexistence of all, and it's also an incident that has lingered for too long. And what we have now prevalent in Plateau, you see this segregated type of living, segregated type of communities. We have a long ethnic line, a long religious line, which makes it prone to a lot of attacks against each other. And what we see, unfortunately, from this recent one is also cases of vengeful reprisals. It started way back since February. The troops on the ground, Operation Safe Haven, have been able to contain it over the period, and they have done very good professional work to ensure that it never gets out of hand. It's unfortunate that these reprisals across board in both sides of the divide is what normally worsens it. And once we get some kind of respite, everybody go to sleep.
General, I do not know whether it's just idealism to believe that there's such a thing as perfect peace, except in death. But there can be some level of sanity, because we live in a global world where we see that there are climes that even where people disagree, do not, maybe don't even want to see one another eye to eye. They are able to coexist some way or the other because they are run by law and there is a consequence of bad behavior. So sometimes it's difficult to say what exactly is responsible for the perpetuity on the plateau. When I saw the story at the weekend, it just felt very sad, because I just remember that less than a year and a half ago, December 24th, and even I think in early January of December 24, 2023, and I think January 2024. So cumulatively, I think Nigeria lost about maybe 150 to 200 people in that same Plateau state. So from your experience as a general who has been in these places, what exactly is the core issue, if we want to be brutally honest? Is it that we are not brutally honest, that's why we're not having a closure, or this is just difficult to deal with?
You're absolutely right. We are not, I like the choice of word, brutally honest, in the issues that emanate from Plateau. And we must go to the root causes of this. And it has been in that dichotomy of indigene and settlers. unless that is resolved. That is the root cause of the problems on the plateau. Who is an indigene, who is a settler? And unfortunately, the Constitution did not express that. I do hope that those looking into the constitutional amendment will be able to address that. In one aspect, you address as a citizen, and in another aspect, you address as an indigene. And that's on one there. And again, these are people who have lived together for years, and suddenly this animosity, deep-rooted animosity against one another, is what has make it to linger over and again. It's unfortunate, like I said, it is one death too many. And there is a lot of effort that is on from the military side, from the other security agencies and all whatnot, to stem the tide of if not for their efforts, it would have been worse than we are experiencing today. It's unfortunate, effort must be made to secure life, to see ourselves as one Nigerian living in peace and harmony with one another. Unfortunately, certain persons are there to make sure that that does not happen. And then the other aspect that is also at the root cause is some kind of weak legal system. Because even in a situation whereby criminals are arrested, the provisions that to try them are just so weak. It's like a slap on the wrist. And then they go back to the community and even cause more havoc. So we must have a deliberate effort that say, let us put this behind us. And at the root of it all is this dichotomy. If it's not resolved, that's going to be a problem. I was privileged when in 2019, when the House of Assembly, after inauguration, they visited me as commander on the ground. And I told them bluntly, and perhaps, I don't know, for lack of choice of words, that if you are all representatives of the people, if you don't address this issue of indigenship and settler, this problem will keep on going on. And again, at the root of it, yes, like you said, there will always be issues of disharmony and all whatnot. But when it goes into killings and reprisals and counterattacks and all whatnot, then that means things they will get out of hand. And most often we forget that the communities are far flung from one another. Some are like 20 kilometers far apart, some are 50 kilometers far apart, and there are no infrastructure connecting these communities. Even in some communities, you cannot reach them by motorbike. So, and once there are attacks, they choose their target very carefully. And before the security agencies can even react, the havoc has been committed. And it might also interest us to realize that when you are talking about counterattacks and reprisals, it's always to other innocent communities who were not at the initial bane of the problems. So we must be able to come together as a people to agree on how to address the issue in Plateau, and by extension, the entire North Central states.
So, General, as much as we're being brutally honest, I want us to also target that honesty at the right people. So that Nigerians know who to hold responsible, or at least know where the problems are, so begin to troubleshoot it. We've heard different stories and accounts of security operatives arresting people, and after a while, they get calls, in quote, from above, saying, well, you have to let those people go. You have operated in that area. You have led the Operation Safe Haven. So you might want to speak to that. Is that something that happened or still happens, where you get calls and say, you know, you have to let those people go, or do you want us to have trouble on our hands? That's on the one hand. When you say the indigent-settler issue is responsible for this, what is the solution, really? Some have said, well, everybody should stay in their domain. But this is Nigeria, right? There is some sort of freedom of movement. So some said, you know, let's just have security bases in these areas. We had security bases, but you hear the people say, well, we call the military or security operatives, and they come hours after the attack. So they also allege complicity on the part of the security operatives. So two questions in one: interference from people from above in that sense, and complicity on the part of security operatives. Is that something you experienced during your time, General?
We want to totally disagree on the aspect of complicity of the military or the security agencies generally. In the first instance, there is a very good interagency cooperation on the Plateau. All the agencies of government, all the security agencies, they are functioning as one body, and they also share information and share knowledge, and also even material and expertise. So the complicity there is always, and we have to be very careful on who is talking, because most often people talk from their own ethnic biases. Unless we are able to hold this in that a criminal is a criminal irrespective of where he comes from. Right. And unfortunately, there is an aspect in the entirety of the Plateau conundrum that we're not even looking at. The number of orphans that the crisis have created, the number of widows that the crisis have created. Look, this issue needs to be stopped. And then those who are charged with the other responsibility, and they have to come on board and take it up as it's supposed to be. I've been in touch with distinguished Senator Simon Bakula Long, and I know all the effort that he's been carrying out on regarding, even though it's not his senatorial zone, distinguished Senator Dickett Plank, I know all the effort that they are doing at their own levels and all whatnot. And again, let's go back to the position of the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa. He remained and maintains that every of our insecurity or every of our security challenges has only 30% military effort, while the other 70% is a whole of a society. Now, most often, once the situation is sorted out, like you mentioned, from 2023 to 2024, December, January, we saw what happened in that period, and even now, what is going on now, which since 27th of February this year, that's when this particular situation commenced. And the security agencies have nipped everything on the board. But like I say, and from my own experiences, the criminals, I call them criminals, they choose their target far-flung from the society where there is no infrastructural development that connects the people together and all whatnot, and they carefully choose their target and they execute their heinous crime. So these are mere criminals. And again, we must look into again, without repeating myself, the weak legal system. Criminals have been arrested, handed over for prosecution, handed over for, but because the provisions of whatever crime that they are being requires for bail or some little amount of money to be paid, and the person is set free, and then he goes back to the society and become worse than earlier on. And somebody who has been in detention or who has gone through some legal processes is already hardened, and he does not see anything wrong in that. And again, we kept on saying about conflict merchant. There are people who profiteer from this insecurity for whatever the reasons are, for whatever their purposes are. So we have to the whole of society need to be on board. The non-governmental organization, civil society organization, every person have to be on board to make sure that these incidences of attack ceases. Let's even we must have a tangible, measurable. Can we say for 365 days there should be peace and security on the Plateau? Is it possible, or is that hypothetical? So these are things that we need to come together as a people, and not any time that these issues come up, then we just realize that yes, it's just we versus them or them versus us.
All right, General, let's look at a few things. We're going to talk about some of the operational issues, but I want you to, from your experience and now speaking to the civil space as a general, I have spoken to some authorities on the Plateau, and one of the things that you see they put out is the fact that this is fundamentally about land grabbing. That is one of the things I've heard them say, that these are settlers who are coming to do business or rear cattle or whatever, and then eventually they want to own this space, and that's why the friction. I do not know how long this has been and all of that, but that seemed to be the bone of contention in the long run. So if you were to make a suggestion, so for instance, the settler has been there for 20 years, 30 years, maybe even 40 years, and has begun to have that sense of, indigenship. But the indigenes will say, okay, this is how far you can go, this is how far you cannot go. And then all of this friction is beginning to happen. So in your view, what is the best, non-kinetic approach to begin to resolve this? Because these are headlines, to be very honest. These are very strong headlines. Where do we begin from in resolving this headline in terms of conflict resolution?
You recall that under the administration of distinguished Senator Simon Bako Lalong, he established a Plateau Peace Building Agency. And as it is today, the current administration still maintains that agency. And that agency is headed by one of our renowned conflict experts in the person of Dr. Sander. And they'll be doing enormous work. And in this agency, they have what we call peace monitors in all the communities to give some kind of early warnings and all whatnot. Well, you see, Plateau, the settlement is not a congregated kind of settlement that we have. You will see somebody, a family, you might be shocked that a distance between one family within a community to another might be up to 200 meters away, and under very terrible landscape or whatnot, so that communication even between them by voice and all is even very difficult. And of course, needless to talk about if there are other means of communications like your mobile phones and all whatnot. So people are living, people want to live the way that they want to live. But the point is that the criminals seize the opportunities of this disenchantment, and they unleash it to on innocent persons. Now, when you talk about the settlers, it's not 20 years or 30 years. I can tell you, some are as far as 100 and even 200 years. Some trace their grandfather, great-grandfather to wherever that it is. That's why I was saying that we must be able to have that constitutional definition of or expunging. If you look at the Constitution very well, I'm not a legal person or whatnot, but you will see that in a certain instance you are talking about citizens of the country. In another place, say wherever you said you are an indigene of that place. So it's some kind of contradiction. So if we are ready to face this headlong, and unfortunately, it is a very sensitive thing to address, because I've been able to also interact with a lot of within the traditional institution, everything. The languages I hear from them is also not that it's not too heartwarming. Now, you were talking about land grabbing. I can tell you from my experience. From my experience on the ground, and I have a good grip of the nooks and crannies while I was there, and the current commander is also doing the same or whatnot. It is very difficult, but when you want to give a dog a bad name, you start using that of land grabbing. All right. It's almost, or for the lack of semantics, or when people are bereft of good ideas and reasoning or whatnot, they say land grabbing. And good enough, you see gradually the issue of farmer header crisis is also now being like a thing of the past. So these are languages that people use in order to foment the trouble, to cause the trouble, to give credence to their criminal intent on both sides. Everybody, both sides. It's not a matter of whether you're of this tribe or that tribe, but whenever there is any crisis, both sides are at fault.
Well, General, speaking of the name being given to these attacks, as we wind down, it's also been described as Fulani herdsmen killing natives who are Christians, and I'm sure you've gotten all of that kind of tagging while you were there, and that's what is quite prominent, particularly on social media now. So you see it's an attack on Christians by Fulani herdsmen, it's a reprisal, they were killed first. How should we see this? And more importantly, also, what do you expect from the government of Plateau State and the federal government? Because the NSA said enough is enough. What does enough is enough look like in terms of security and non-kinetic as we wind down, General?
Yes, I agree with the National Security Advisor. Of course, enough is enough, like we are talking about. And now the federal government is at the verge of going into all these development commissions, North Central Development Commission. There must be a holistic approach to the Plateau, and Plateau cannot be handled in isolation. We must take the entirety, because what happens in Plateau reflects in Nasarawa. What happened in Nasarawa, southern Kaduna, even the Bauchi, the southern part of Bauchi, and as the case may be. So we need to have a very good coordination within this state, because the criminals, they move from one area to another. Across the state, across borders, and of course, the communities on the ground, they know who these merchants are. Bring them out. If we do not coordinate the activities of all these criminal gangs and their sponsors and the circle will continue along that line. So it's very essential that the federal government of Nigeria, under whatever auspices, should have a coordinated approach to look into the entirety of the North Central region of the country. And by that, we'll be able to be addressing Plateau in the states in isolation.
Right.
And again, of course, the Plateau state government is also doing their best. I know, and of course, I know from hindsight that also the military and the other security agencies, they are doing their best to contain all these. If not for their effort, it would have been worse than we have experienced now. But it's unfortunate. We do hope that sooner than later, everything that relates to attacks and counterattacks on the Plateau will be a thing of the past.
So do you agree that this is Fulani herdsmen, Christian indigens narrative? Do you agree with it from the evidence?
It's a kind of, sincerely, I want to disagree. I want to disagree. There's nothing like Fulani herdsmen. There's nothing like Christian. There's no, but we know also that when some persons, they are looking for favors from some international organization or whatnot, they target religious or whatnot. And when some persons are looking for, of course, I had to contend with that while I was there. I had to get some associations that came visiting our whatnot. I told them outrightly, it has nothing to do with religion. What we are experiencing here is criminal stealing of cattle, stealing of motorcycles, stealing, and the locals, they know who the criminals are. So when they go after the criminals, and unfortunately do take the laws into their hands and whatnot, then the result becomes what we see. And what happened, the one we are experiencing now, was as a result of stealing of cattle and stealing of motorcycles, and whereby the community there, they killed a Fulani man, and the Fulani people came back in retaliation to that, because this attack and counter-attack, it will never help us in addressing the peace and security situation that we so desire on the Plateau. I can conveniently say by my experience and whatnot, the issue relating to along religious line is almost not there. But we know we have these three devils, you know, that are affecting Africa as a whole: ethnicity, religion, even political affinity or socioeconomic reasons and all whatnot. But in the case of what goes on the Plateau, the totality of it is criminal, criminals taking advantage of the vulnerability of the people to unleash mayhem.
And we expect the full force of the law on this criminality. We have to thank you so much, General, for providing the much-needed insight into these issues. We've been speaking with Major General Augustine Agundu, former Commander, Operation Safe Haven. He's retired, but certainly not tired. Thank you so much, General.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you've gotten an insight from the security angle. What about the people on the ground, the indigents, the government, the residents? That's the moment. Stay with us.